Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Calgary, Alberta. Let's see, what day is it? Wednesday morning, August the 25th, and I'm happy to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from Blog Talk Radio. I have the chat room open if anybody would like to sit in there and hang out if you're awake and up at this time. Yeah, I'm glad to be able to do the shows. Looking at this week and a little bit last week at toxic shame and some information I found from some websites that are talking about John Bradshaw's book. Actually, I'll get the title for you, and I'll get that website information for you, too. And we're going to continue talking about that all week. I just wanted to kind of go over it and cover it. It's good information for myself, as a survivor, regarding the whole issue of shame, which I had no real idea what shame actually encompassed. I had always heard the words, shame on you, or shame on your behavior, or stuff like this, but I never associated it with feelings that I might be feeling and have it because of the abuse that I experienced, right? So it's very interesting to take a look at it, and I find that the websites are quite interesting regarding the dysfunctional family roles and whatnot, and many people have suffered through this, so I just wanted to cover this, and it's good for me too. So hopefully you're getting something out of it. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist. I say this on every show. It's very important for people to know that. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows, just to get the word out and to be another voice, just one more voice out there with everybody else's who are, trying to change this mess and trying to break the silence and break the barriers down, regarding abuse and especially child abuse, right? Because nobody wants to talk about it, no one wants to deal with it. The main portion of society, the public, this is such an uncomfortable topic, and it's so hurtful that most people just don't want to deal with it. And of course, these poor children out here today, are dealing with it, and they will tomorrow and the next day until we can stop this mess. And of course, there's so many survivors, trying to pick up the pieces of their lives, of their shattered world and piece it back together. And so I just wanted to be one more voice out here for people to say, you're not alone, and we can do this, and I believe it. And we just need to get help, right? Whatever that help is, whether we get counseling, therapist, group support, just calling a crisis line, whatever you have to do, reach out and get help. Don't suffer in silence and suffer along in this lonely, very sad place, right? There's help out there, and there's really good people out there. So I just want to be one more voice of encouragement for people, who have been through this and who have suffered through this, right? So, you have to listen at your own discretion, especially survivors, right? We all, things can trigger people, and sometimes we're just not in a safe enough place, we're not feeling strong, and so information like this, that we might come across on the web or whatever, could trigger us, and then, if we're not feeling well, it could cause us to kind of go down and sort of regress backwards, in our healing. And so you don't want to do that, right? So you want to listen at your own discretion. If you're feeling uncomfortable and you just think, this topic's going to trigger me, I better not listen to it, then, you can always listen another time, right? The archives will be here, and you can just tune in to some of the shows when you're feeling more stronger, or if you have someone with you to listen to them and you just wanted to go back and listen to them, right? So make sure you're in a safe enough place to listen to the shows. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. There's a lot of adult content on all of my shows. And it's ultimately about stopping child abuse, But the whole issue is because abuse is not talked about a whole lot, there's, especially young people, might have, it's a little bit scary. And they might be confused about what I'm talking about because it's not mainstream. People are not necessarily talking about adult survivor issues, right, in the public, right? So it could be confusing. So I would just ask that you have someone listen to the show with you, whether it's a parent, if you have a parent that cares, which I sure hope you do, or caregiver, a guardian, a teacher, counselor, mentor, an adult, someone in your life who you trust and has proven themselves trustworthy, to listen to the shows with you, and then they can help you make the decision whether you should be listening or not. So we'll get right into the topic here of shame, and this is from Hope for Survivors, www.hope, the number 4, survivors.com /shame.html. This is where I found this information. And Hope for Us, this is a survivor, the person who's actually written and put these websites up is not John Bradshaw, but it's a lady who actually read John Bradshaw's book, and I'll get the title for you. I don't want to mess it up, so I'll get the real title for you. And she is just going over what she learned in that book and also talks about her own stuff. So it's quite interesting. Hope for Us is a survivor of childhood physical, sexual, emotional, and ritualistic abuse. And she is currently writing a book on the subject that will include other self-help ideas like this. And so, this is just her, who's actually written this stuff, right? And I think, let me get the title of John Bradshaw's book. Hopefully she lists it here. I think it's called Healing the Shame That Binds Us, or it's something like that. But anyway, I haven't read the book, and I would like to. So I'm going to actually search out this book from John Bradshaw, because I know a lot of people have said that they've read it, and it looks very interesting to me. But just from what she's written here, I think this is some good information. It certainly has been for me. Take a look at shame and toxic shame, right? And we'll start right at the top here. I'm just reading from the website, so if you'd like to join me there, it's www.hope.survivors.com/shame.html. And it says here, John Bradshaw says that because of its proverbial origins, shame is difficult to define. It is a healthy human power which can become a true sickness of the soul. And there are two forms of shame. There's healthy, nourishing shame, and there's toxic, life-destroying shame. So that's what John Bradshaw says. And as toxic shame, it is an excruciatingly internal experience of unexpected exposure. It is a deep cut felt primarily from the inside. It divides us from ourselves and from others. And in toxic shame, we disown ourselves, and this disowning demands a cover-up. Toxic shame parades in many garbs and get-ups. It loves darkness and secretiveness. It is the dark secret aspect of shame which has evaded our study. It says, because toxic shame stays in hiding and covers itself up, we have to track it down by learning to recognize its many faces and its many distracting behavioral cover-ups. So John Bradshaw goes on to explain that healthy, nourishing shame makes us human. Healthy shame is honest. Healthy shame is a way of realizing our limitations. She goes on to talk about this psychologist and a psychoanalyst, Erik Erikson, wrote that a sense of shame is part of the second stage of psychosocial development. In the first stage, a child needs to establish a sense of basic trust, and this basic trust must be greater than his sense of mistrust. And we can understand healthy shame best by understanding this trust stage of psychosocial development. And once basic trust has been established, the child is in a position to develop shame. The shame may be healthy or toxic. And Erikson said that between the ages of 15 months and 3 years, the psychosocial task for this stage of development is to strike a balance between autonomy and shame and doubt. So John Bradshaw explains at length the different processes for developing both healthy shame and toxic shame in his book. And here is a brief rundown of both. So there's healthy shame, and they say healthy shame is like shame is embarrassment and blushing, like if we make a mistake. Mistakes are part of human nature, it says. With blushing, we know we've made a mistake, so that's healthy shame. Shame is shyness. Shyness is a natural boundary that keeps us from being harmed by a stranger. Shame is the basic need for community. As humans, we have a basic need for community. Our shame, in this case, acts as a healthy reminder that sometimes we need help, and that we have a need to be involved in loving, caring relationships, right? Shame is the source of creativity and learning. One of the biggest roadblocks to creativity is a feeling of being right. When we think we are absolutely right, we stop seeking further information. Being certain stops curiosity. Curiosity is at the heart of all learning. So our healthy shame never allows us to think we know it all. Shame is the source of spirituality. This is interesting. Some would say that spirituality is our ultimate human need. Healthy shame is essential for grounding ourselves to this ultimate source of reality. Healthy shame reminds us that we are not God, and it grounds us in humility. So that's what they've written here. Then they talk about toxic shame, and toxic shame is like neurotic syndromes of shame. Toxic shame is an all-pervasive sense that I am flawed. It is a belief that we are worthless and defective as a human being. It is more than just a fleeting feeling of unworthiness. It's an internal sense of falling short. If we experience toxic shame, it is difficult to recognize. As Bradshaw says, a shame-based person will guard against exposing his inner self or herself to others. Both more significantly, they will guard themselves against exposing themselves to themselves. So even to themselves, they can't expose themselves, right? Internalization of shame. Internalization of shame involves at least 3 processes, and they go on to list these here. Number 1, identification with shame-based models. Number 2, abandonment, the legacy of broken mutuality. And number 3 is interconnection of memory imprints. And number 1 is identification with shame-based models. The need to identify with someone to belong is one of our most basic needs, second only to self-preservation. And this begins with our primary caregivers and significant others. When children have shame-based caregivers and significant others, they identify with them. And this is the first step in internalizing shame. Abandonment, the legacy of broken mutuality. Children find love, acceptance, and identity in the mirroring eyes of their parents or primary caregivers. Abandonment can include this lack or loss of positive mirroring, not just physical abandonment, besides physical desertion and lack of mirroring. Abandonment includes any of the following, which is neglect, abuse of any kind, enmeshment into the needs of the parents. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty serious. It's pretty heavy duty, and small children, little babies, and infants, and small children, growing up with parents who are themselves shame-based and toxic, right? It's no wonder the kids have a hard time. You know what I mean? It's like we learn everything from whoever is raising us, right? Whether it's your parents or some caregiver, or whoever it is, right? So we're going to mirror and we're going to take on what we learn from them. So it's no wonder we have so many problems, right? And it's not our fault, right? That's the big part. That's what I think is so important to remember. It's not our fault, and we just have to learn how to overcome it. Number 3, interconnection of memory imprints. Shaming experiences are recorded in a child's memory banks, as Bradshaw explains, because the victim has no time or support to grieve the pain of the broken mutuality. His emotions are repressed, or her emotions are repressed, and the grief is unresolved. Any future experience which even vaguely resembles the original shame-based trauma can easily trigger the words, sights, sounds, smells, or other senses involved in the original trauma. Self-alienation and isolation. Alienation means that you experience parts of yourself that are alien to you. For example, I was shamed for crying. Now, this is what this lady says here. I was shamed for crying during my childhood abuse. Therefore, feeling grief and crying became an alienated part of myself. Whenever I feel grief now, I often experience toxic shame. And this is why it is so important to learn how to heal the toxic shame that binds us to our past trauma in order to adequately process these unresolved emotions. And then they talk about shame as a false self. Because the exposure of self to self lies at the heart of neurotic shame, escape from the self is necessary, and this is accomplished by creating a false self. That's interesting. We went over some of that about the false self yesterday and Monday. Shame is codependency. As discussed on the Nurturing Parent page, people who are codependent try to get their inner child's needs met through another adult, and they focus all their nurturing abilities on other adults. Usually a significant other, who are trying to get these needs met through others. And people who are codependent have no inner life. They lack the ability to get their needs met from within themselves. Therefore, happiness and feelings of self-validation are found outside themselves. And I did take a good look at codependency. We were talking about that for a couple of weeks. I think it was last week and the week before. And that's so interesting to me. I had no idea. I mean, I had heard about codependency, and people even said, I think some of your family members are codependent, or they were, or whatever. And I didn't quite understand what it was all about. It was so helpful to go and find out what codependency is, and how it affects people, and take a look at that whole thing. Right? It's really interesting what happens to people. I recognize codependency now in my family, right, because did a lot of the reading on it, and so I had no idea otherwise before that what they were talking about. So it's quite interesting to see that. Some of my family is still very much codependent, and I'm trying to not be codependent. So it's hard because if the rest of the family doesn't want to come up and heal, doesn't want to. That's what I'm kind of going through right now, because I'm doing what I'm doing, right? I'm doing these shows, and I've written my book, which, to tell my story and my family story, right? And the rest of my siblings that are living today don't appreciate it at all. And it's no wonder, because what it does is it calls them out. They can't with what I'm doing, it doesn't allow them to keep that false self-image that they've been able to keep, right? Because now, what I'm doing affects their lives, because if someone knows me and them and contacts them and says, well, what do you think about what your sister's doing? Telling the family story and talking about abuse and, trying to help survivors of abuse and trying to help stop child abuse, right? It's going to call them out, because they'll be like, well, we didn't know you grew up like that. And of course, then my sister and my brother would have to be like, well, they either have to lie and say that what I'm saying is not true, or they'd have to agree with it and say, yeah, true. And so it makes them face it, see. But if they don't want to come along on this healing journey with me, I can't stay back there for them. And that's that whole codependency thing. I decided, okay, relationship or no relationship, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on and heal, right? If they choose to stay in the back, and not heal, that is their own choice. We have a choice here, and I'm making a choice to do this for my own sake, to heal, right? Because I really want to be a productive citizen here on the earth, and I want to be happy, and I want to have peace in my heart, right? So I started on my healing journey, which was really about 3.5 years ago. And so the rest of my family did not come along. And they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to deal with it. They just want to pretend it never happened. And that's why I wrote my story about it. Last October, I started writing my blog, Not So Fond Memories Growing Up in an Abusive Home, because I couldn't stand the thought of going to my grave with this information. It bothered me, and I thought, man, I cannot let this injustice go by. It's not just about me. I mean, it's what happened to my mom. It's what happened to my brothers. It's what happened to my sisters. It's not just a book about, what happened to Lori. I mean, this was my family was destroyed, and by two people who could not manage having a family, right? So absolutely horrible. And of course that shame doesn't belong to me, and that's why I believe once I was able to look at that and say, I did not deserve that shame does not belong to me, that belonged to my abusers. That shame should be directed to who it belongs to, right? So I started doing that 3.5 years ago, and I started to realize, hey, I did not deserve that. No one in my family did, but I sure didn't. I know that. And so I don't have to take this on as something that belongs to me, right? It's almost, I was talking about this a while back, maybe a few months ago, on one of my shows, where I was just sort of relating it to having a necklace around my neck. I'd been carrying this necklace around my neck, full of all kinds of this leftover abuse garbage, which was like, self-worthlessness and shame and guilt and all this stuff, right? And being made to feel like, so bad, right? It was all hanging around my neck on this necklace. And I thought, I don't have to wear that necklace. I didn't put that necklace on myself. You know what I mean? My parents gave me that necklace. So whoever your abuser is, they put something on you that does not belong to you, and that is shame. So, I took that necklace off and I threw it away. I said, that does not belong to me. That shame, that verbal abuse, the physical abuse, the psychological and emotional abuse, the sexual abuse did not belong to me. I threw it away. You know what I mean? And that way I could get rid of that necklace. The weight came off, and I thought, I'm telling my story. I don't care. I don't have to sit here and be ashamed of something because I did not have a thing to do with it. You know what I mean? It was put on me. So I thought, no, I'm telling my story, and I don't have to sit here in shame and silence anymore. And that's exactly what this is all about. And, when people choose to sit in that, right, which I did for 41 years, it's no wonder my family's doing that. They have not come to terms or come to grips with what happened, and they would prefer to live in a false reality, right? And they prefer not to have to look at it because it's too painful. And everybody in their own way has different feelings on things. So all of my siblings feel differently about the situation because we all grew up different times in that family. Some of my siblings one of them's quite a bit older than myself. He's one of the oldest siblings, and he experienced a whole different childhood than I did. So he has different set of memories, right? And so he doesn't relate to what I'm talking about at all. Even though he has to admit some of it. It's true because he knows he was there. But the thing is we experienced two different childhoods, right? And same with my sister, who's 5 years older than myself. We're a lot closer in age. We're the closest in age in the family, and she's the next living sister to me. And so there's only there's three of us left, right? So does she experience the same things? Well, absolutely. She grew up in the same house I did. We shared a room, for all of our life, except for until I was about 13, when when we finally got our own rooms, I believe when I was about 13. So, because, 7 kids, right? 5 kids at home all the time. And and two parents, right, that weren't sleeping together. So, it was pretty tight quarters, right? So nobody had any privacy. So she grew up in the same home I did, and does she acknowledge this stuff? Absolutely not. It's too painful. So, that's the whole issue. I can't stay back there just to appease my family, right? And I thought, I'm not going to stay silent just so that I don't hurt my family's feelings. I don't care. If it hurts my family's feelings, that's unfortunate. I did not write my story to hurt anybody's feelings. I wrote my story to tell the truth. And I thought, truth is truth. It needs to be out there. And that was the first time I actually felt a real the load of the shame and the whole issues of being silenced as a survivor of child abuse came off of me when I actually was able to do that. So, would I recommend everybody do that? I mean, not necessarily. You have to be able to face the consequences of writing of going public with your story, because it does have consequences. But the thing is, I weighed it all out. I spent weeks thinking about it and making sure that I wanted to go public with my story before I published the first one in the blog, right? So and then I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do, and I started directing people to my website. I wanted people to see this because I wanted other survivors to know, hey, we're not alone, and I wanted other people who have not experienced child abuse to know what it's like to be abused as a child. It's absolutely horrific. And unless you've been there, you wouldn't know, right? And I thought, man, I'm telling my story. It needs to be told. And so, I just, my hats are off to everyone who breaks the silence and breaks the chains and gets some help, because it's like my sister. She'll never be able to experience this feeling that I have. She will never, ever be able to experience it until she decides to let that shame go and break the silence herself. She's got her own set of silence to break, right? And so, if she doesn't want to do that, that's her choice. And but I can't stay back there as a codependent person and just, I can't do this because it would hurt my family. And of course, their feelings come first. It's like, no, my feelings come first. My life is first, because God is first place in my life, first of all. I mean, just, I have to say that. And then I come next, because, without, if I can't find that peace and that happiness within, then I will never be happy. You know what I mean? I can try to please all the people in the world, including my family members who are still very much dysfunctional, and then end up just lost in this mess. You know what I mean? So that's why, I feel bad about my family not coming along with me on this healing journey, but that is their choice, right? And people, they have a choice to make. They have to live this life themselves. So if they just feel that they're not ready to heal, well, that's their own prerogative. But some of them are getting quite old now, so I would hope that they would do it soon. So that's codependency. That whole codependent thing is horrible, and my family is still very much codependent, and I'm not. So that's why we've sort of split off, because I've broken that whole stuff. I'm not going along with it anymore. See? Shame is borderline personality. This is interesting. Many psychiatrists today see many types of mental illness as rooted in neurotic shame. Borderline personality involves self-image disturbance, difficulty identifying and expressing one's own thoughts, and difficulty with self-assertion. Shame is the core and fuel of all addiction. Toxic shame turns a person into a human doing rather than a human being, and a person's self-worth is measured by what they do on the outside instead of what is on the inside. Addiction is a self-fulfilling, shame-based behavior. One seeks mood alteration and emotion numbing with the addictive behavior, and what follows is shame over one's behavior and the resulting consequences, for example, hangover, infidelity, etc. And this toxic shame fuels the addiction and starts the process all over again. And I haven't done a whole lot of study on addiction, but I know that I'm a very much addicted person. I'm addicted to just about anything I can get my hands on. And so I have to be really careful what I do, because, I'm addicted to food, I'm addicted to all the legal stuff now, right? But it used to be all the illegal stuff. And but now it's all legal, right? I'm just addicted to food, sweets, sugar, coffee, cigarettes, these things that I find that make me, that supposedly, quote unquote, make me feel better, which actually don't. The cigarettes are killing me. All the sugar and the sweets is making me sick. And, the coffee, I love coffee, but, I drink too much of it. I'm basically it's just detrimental to my health, right? Because I'm trying to take care of myself, but I'm doing these legal addiction things, right? Instead of the illegal stuff, which I did for years. So that's why, I'm still very much an addicted person. I just changed what I was addicted to, So I have to work on that. That is something that I have not come very far in. I'm just doing legal stuff now, which is great. I can hold a job down. I don't have to worry about getting arrested. And the whole thing is it doesn't matter. The addictions are still there. And so I have to, I'd like to do some work in that area and really find out what the root of the problem is, whether it is shame or whatever, and actually learn how to cope with it. Because I use things for many, many reasons, cigarettes, food, and all that stuff, right? And I have to be very, very careful. And I mean, I'll smoke like cigarettes. I mean, I'd smoke 3 packs if I'm up all long enough, 3 packs a day, because I'm like a chain smoker. So I have to be really excuse me, like diligent not to smoke that much. It's like, okay, we're only having 1 pack, you know what I mean? And it's ridiculous because I've been smoking since I was about 12 years old, and heavy duty, smoker when I was young, smoking everything I could get my hands on. And now as an adult smoking cigarettes, it's like I need to quit, And but it's that whole addiction thing. So I'm going to be working on that. I'll probably do some work on that on my show actually, coming up in the future here. Take a look at addiction, right? Shame is guilt. Healthy guilt is at the core of our conscience. It helps us determine right from wrong. And toxic guilt carries a sense of hopelessness, a sense, since one believes that they are flawed beyond repair. And that is sad, that whole feeling of a person thinking, I'm just so damaged, I'm just so beyond repair. And that's where I was 3.5 years ago. I would hope that everybody would realize that I've come a long way in 3.5 years, mainly due to the fact that I started to love myself. That was the biggest part. I started to love that child inside of me that was so wounded and so upset and angry about how she had been treated, that little person inside of me that I never got in touch with. I just kept her pushed away somewhere way in the back there, right, until I realized that she needed love and she needed care, and I was going to be the only one that was going to be able to do that. So once I started to do that, started to realize, hey, I do love myself. I love that little person inside of me that needed this love so long ago, and this treatment, this good treatment, this cuddling and hugging. I mean, I actually went so far as to hold my own hand because that's how I was suffering, and I was on my own. I was not smart enough to reach out and get help, right, until recently. So, but at least what I was willing to do was take a look at it for what it was, because I had already been suicidal for so long that I was like, okay, no, I know I'm not going to push myself over the edge because I've already decided I'm going to fight to live. So I stopped the suicidal thoughts and all that, and I decided to start self-nurturing and self-nurturing myself because I wasn't getting it from anywhere else. And I thought, okay, I have to do this. It's so important, that I learn how to love myself and how to love this inner child. And so I've done a whole lot of work on that in the last 3.5 years, and it has helped. It's actually that little person inside of me is not screaming anymore. She's not raging anymore. She's very much a lot more comforted and feels a lot better. That wounded child that I was, is feeling a little bit better these days, and that's because I've done a whole lot of work, so it's not going to happen overnight, that's for sure. And I had to go so far as to hold my own hand quite a few times because there was nobody here to do that. So I thought, you know what, I do matter, I do count. I'll just hold my own hand, and I'll just comfort myself. And that's what I did. And it did help a lot because really, the person who I was looking to do that was my mother, she's gone, and she would never do that anyway, even if she was still here. She wouldn't be able to make up for, the 18 years of legally being under her thumb, you know what I mean, and being mistreated and not wanted and unloved, right? So I had to do that myself. So that's what I'm hoping that everybody else will do, is develop this love for yourself, this sense that you are worth it, and that you do count, you do matter, and that, we do deserve to have a good life, and we did not deserve what happened to us, for sure. And then, and then from there we can move on, right? Because we can know, hey, I do deserve better, and I'm going to have to do it. I'll have to be the one to take the first step, to keep reaching out, to keep moving forward in my healing journey, to keep on track, with getting help, right? No matter what way it is, get a therapist or group support or whatever, you're comfortable with, right? Just get some help and not suffer in silence. So we have about a minute left, everybody. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I appreciate everybody being here. And tomorrow morning we'll just, same time, same place, one child abuse survivor to another. I'll be on tonight on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. I'll be on for an hour myself tonight, and we're going to be looking at the long-term effects and consequences of child abuse and neglect. And then I'll be on my own show after that, right? So have a great day, everybody. Take care of yourselves. And, if you need something, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio or Facebook and whatnot. And, if I can get any information for you, links or any information that I have, get a hold of me and I'll get that to you. And just take care of yourselves. Keep reaching out. Never, ever, ever give up. That's my big thing. Never give up. I'm so glad that I'm here today to be able to say that, because I'm glad I didn't give up, and I'm glad that, and I hope that you won't either. Because you know what? It's worth it. It's worth hanging on. Hang on to this, to what we have, and then we can have, eventually down the road, we can heal, and we can learn to enjoy this life, right? So never, ever, ever give up, right? That's the message for today. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.